What do you say, everybody? Look who I got on the show today. We're going to talk with Gonzo, Mark Gonzales, longtime with the Tribune, now with the Sun-Times. We're going to talk some Cubs baseball. He's out in Arizona. Hey, I want to remind you guys to check out Beer Money. That's with Jody Davis. Next show drops tomorrow on Sunday. We talk Harry Carey. We get into what he used to see Harry Carey drink at the bar. It wasn't Bud, by the way. And some other really fun stories, including his first bat, which was a Ron Santo edition for the Cubs Hall of Famer, Jody Davis. All right, let's get this show started. Can't wait to talk about the Cubs with spring training games underway. Let's go. All right, Gonzo, good to see you, brother. How you been?
Been great. Thanks for having me on. I enjoy your show.
I appreciate it, man. Always like the media scrums. I'd see you guys over there, trying to work the manager to get the good questions out of them. It was like an all-star team of media people when I first got into the business, as a young guy, just like being out at spring training and then seeing you guys get together. I could tell when you guys you were on the scent of a story. It would be like you and then Gordon Wittenmeyer and then, Patrick Mooney and then, maybe Paul Sullivan. And then you guys are all kind of coming from different angles. I'm sure I missed somebody in there, but anyway, you've been an OG like me, so good to see you. Now let's talk about this Cubs team. What did you think about the offseason? Getting Alex Bregman, trading Owen Casey to get Edward Cabrera, losing Kyle Tucker. If you were grading the Cubs, what would you grade them, and how did you like the moves that they made?
I'd give them a B, maybe a B+. I really like the addition of Bregman. You could say that they should have got him last year. They should have made a stronger push. So Happ Sharma was leading that crusade, and he was spot on there. But end result is they got Tucker instead. They got good mileage out of Tucker for 4 months, and then he had the injuries, which was unfortunate. Adding Cabrera was something they needed to do in terms of getting a top of the line or close to top of the line starter. We know there's medical issues, so be careful there. Kind of crushed me to see Owen Casey go, but you got to give up something to get something. Big Casey fan here. The guy is just really mature, very polished. You know him from your days calling games. Really like the kid, but at some point, you got to make a decision on prospects, whether they're a part of your future or you move on and get something that's more instant in terms of your return.
Yeah, it's a tough deal. I mean, you're right. You got to give up something to get something. And, one area where the Cubs aren't so strong is pitching in their minor league system. Now, one guy that we're all kind of looking forward to seeing is Jackson Wiggins. I think he's the real deal. We talked about him on a show yesterday. But this one could hurt, man. I mean, I'm just warning people, this one could be one of those moves where you look back and you're like, we had him and we really don't even know what we got. Besides the high strikeouts, I like everything else that he does.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that you don't have more depth, that you put your hopes on one guy, but that's the way they are right now, especially with the lack of pitching depth in the minor leagues. You mentioned Wiggins. I mean, he's got to be the dude, but at some point you got to fortify your farm system with more high-end arms. We saw what Cade Horton did. That was a terrific draft pick. Tip of the cap to the scout in Texas, Mr. Nichols, who did a terrific job and does a terrific job down there in the Texas-Oklahoma area. But this organization is going to need more and more young power arms as we move forward, especially guys that are capable of being starters.
Yeah, no doubt. I was surprised, too, in some of the trades that they've made the last few years at the deadline. It's like they don't have that much pitching depth, but then they trade the ones that they have. It's like, I mean, that can come back to bite you, but they seem to like this front office to go out and make deals, to sign free agents. And I thought they were going to add Zach Gallen. I really did. I think they wanted to, but maybe the price was too high.
Yeah, sometimes you're playing a shell game where do you do as far as earmarking money? They gave a big chunk of that money to Bregman. So that probably made them kind of trim in other places. I definitely thought Gallen was headed that way. Definitely did. Maybe it's okay he didn't come to Chicago. I saw him pitch quite a bit down in Arizona, especially the first month of the season, and it wasn't pretty, but he pitched pretty well down the stretch. He gave the Diamondbacks some pretty good length there, but I thought he was headed to the Cubs. I was really surprised. Cabrera, we know about the medical records, but it's kind of interesting how they signed off on him, and yet they didn't go after, they didn't finish the deal with Luzardo because of medical issues a year earlier. So right. I'm really curious to see how this plays out. But when the guy's on, I mean, he's deluxe.
Yeah, he is. Do you think they go with a 6-man rotation eventually? And the reason I say that is just what we were talking about. Edward Cabrera, I've seen him before. The guy can be as good as any pitcher in baseball, but he has a problem throwing a bunch of innings. Justin Steele's coming back at some point, but he's got an injury history. Cade Horton, I think, and I said this before the season even started last year, and everybody watching on this channel knows that. I said that he was as good of a pitching prospect as the Cubs have had since Pryor and Wood, and he lived up to that. I thought he should be Rookie of the Year, but he's also got a history of dealing with injuries, and then you got Matthew Boyd and Jamison Tyone. Injuries, so could they go 6? Shoti Managa's the guy that's kind of been the most durable, but he pitched, we're finding out, with a hamstring last year, and that was why his velo was down, and he was getting hit so hard, I guess, I hope. Could you see him doing 6?
It's a balancing act because starting pitchers love to stay in a rhythm. That rhythm is pitch every 5th day. However, we saw last year what happened, especially with Imanaga fading in the second half. And other guys coming up a little tender. Matthew Boyd was a little tender down the stretch. So I think it is prudent for them to strongly consider a 6-man rotation because it's a long season. Yeah, you do have off days where guys might have as many as 6 or 7 days rest, but you got to think over the long course because we saw what happened in the playoffs where they were piecemealing, especially after Horton had the unfortunate rib injury. I think that given the age as well, I mean, you look at Boyd, he's 36. Yeah. Imanaga is going to be 33 if he's not 33 already. There's a lot of mileage on those guys, a lot of tread worn off. So I think it probably behooved them to start off with 6-man rotation and then kind of manipulate the rotation as you play the days off and see what you can do in terms of maybe skipping a start if a guy needs a blow. I think it's the wise decision at this point.
They could definitely do some things that other teams couldn't do just because of the way that this staff we're figuring is going to be constructed, right? Like, so you got 5 starters, and then you're going to have Colin Ray and Javier Assad, who are both, to me, really interesting pitchers because you could do them as starters. They're fine there. You could do long relief, maybe even do shorter relief with those two. But that versatility, so you got 5 and then 2, and then your regular back-end bullpen guys.
Yeah, I really like Colin Ray. I think he's really a valuable part of this pitching staff. I say pitching staff, not rotation, because he can do so many things well. Assad, I've been chilly on because he's just too young to be hurt so much. We hear stories now that he's in shape. It's about time he got in shape. Now he's going to pitch for Team Mexico, so you cross your fingers that he doesn't get hurt down there. And you think that he's finally said, "Listen, this is my year. I got to step up and do better." We've seen glimpses of it, but he's always been hurt the last 2 years.
Right.
So I raise a yellow flag at this point with him, but you cannot devalue those swing guys, especially a guy like Ray, who knows what he's got at this stage of his career and really turned the corner that last year with Milwaukee and has really taken it another level with the Cubs.
Yeah, I hear you on that, man. Again, it's a good point. I feel like going into the season now, anything can change, right? Because of injuries. And we got guys playing in the World Baseball Classic, I mean, with a bunch of different teams. But let's say everybody's healthy. This team looks really balanced and competitive, right? We talked about the pitching staff. I think that the infield is as solid as it's been since maybe 2016 or 17, right? I like Michael Busch a lot. Now, I don't think he's better than Anthony Rizzo, but I think he's pretty close. Nico Hoerner, who I thought it always kind of reminded me a little bit of Rhino. I thought that eventually the line drives would turn into home runs. That hasn't happened. But everything else, I mean, look, he plays great defense. He's tough. He gets hits. He's clutch. Not Rhino, but really good second baseman. Dansby Swanson defensively is excellent. I don't think that his bat has lived up to his contract, and hopefully that changes this year. And then now you got Alex Bregman. So that infield is super solid with, I feel like the catching position is a weakness for the Cubs. I just don't see Carson Kelly having the year he did last season. It was really most of the first half. And I just have never been a Miguel Amaya super fan, But with that said, he's been a little bit better than what my expectations were for him, except for the injuries. Your thoughts on the infield?
I think the infield's terrific. Just you went around the horn and you nailed it right there, especially Bregman at third just being steady. I thought Matt Shaw got better as the season progressed, but you cannot deny what Bregman does at that position. He's just solid all around. He's still got a strong arm. His range is okay. Keep an eye on his health. That was a pretty serious injury he had early in the season with the Red Sox, and I just happened to be on vacation last July, and I was in Boston and caught his first game back from the injury. And I noticed he was out on the field for 20 minutes stretching that leg with a couple of Red Sox medical staff people. I've never seen a guy go through a pregame routine as lengthy as he did for 20 minutes, just stretching, sprinting and all that. Now, he's almost a year removed from that injury, but it's something to keep an eye on. And then, around the horn, Michael Busch, boy, what a terrific player. He had a breakout year last year, steady first baseman. There's been some talk earlier that he might be more valuable at second, but to me, Nico Hoerner's the best player on the Cubs right now. I mean, aside from Bregman, you can't deny what Bregman's done, but Nico is solid. I don't care about the home runs because he does the intangibles, gets on base, hits behind the runner, runs very well. His defense is solid. If something happened to Swanson, you can move Nico over. He plays a steady shortstop for you.
Yeah, I think so
Swanson, too. Excuse me. With Dansby, one thing I learned in baseball was you cannot be a contender without having a solid shortstop. And nobody has questioned Dansby's defense in the years he's been with the Cubs. And he hasn't slacked off at all. So his offense, we can talk about that later, but he is solid as a defender. And I think that's the pitcher's best friend.
Yeah. How about the catching spot? Well, let me ask you this first. Go back to something you said. You said maybe Michael Busch playing second, and I'd never even thought about that. Although I remember when he came over from the Dodgers, he had played second, he had played third, and the Cubs were like, "Hey, here's first base." You said Nico Hoerner is the best player on the team. There were a lot of trade rumors that Nico might get dealt. I think the Cubs really thought about it, and then I feel like the pressure from the fans. If you're trying to win a World Series, who are you going to put there, right?
Right.
So your thoughts on this whole thing? Do you think that the Cubs were close to trading him, or do you think that it was just, hey, let's just hear what other people might offer us for him?
Well, let's go back a little over a year when Nico had the arm surgery. I think that put a dent in their efforts to move him because he was 2 years away from free agency, and I don't think everybody wanted to see how he had looked coming back after the arm injury. Well, he was spectacular, and I think at some point the Cubs recognized that we're a much better team with him than without him, and trying to get something in return. He's just irreplaceable because for a time there, the offense was feast or famine with the home runs, and it was Nico was the guy that was getting on base, setting the table for the sluggers. This guy's a special player. He's going to go down as one of their best first-round picks in club history just because of everything he does. People will think, hey, wow, let's get a power arm or let's get a slugger. He was the 24th overall pick in that draft, and he's given them everything and more.
Yeah. I remember talking to Sammy about him, the scout that was the cross-checker, Sam Hughes, of course, the son of the late, great, our good buddy Gary Hughes, who's in the open every day, by the way, people, because I like looking at Gary every day because like Gonzo tell you, he's one of the all-time great people, not just baseball people and scouts. And his son's right up there with him. And he's like, hey, I like this guy. I like the way that he hits. He uses the whole field. I like his defense. I see him as a second baseman, but he could play short, like nailed it all. And then he's coming up. I'm watching him every day. And the thing I said to him before he left, the last time he played a game with the Smokies, I said, you just kind of have this Rhino vibe to you, man. Like just the way that I don't think he's totally like stiff backed like Rhino, but just kind of just mechanical. And then the way that he squared the ball up. And, and I've talked about this on here a lot too. I was on The Score talking about it. And then Mully from Mully and Hall beat me up for like months because I compared this guy to Rhino. Hey, guess what, Mully? Look at him now. I mean, like, he didn't develop the home runs, but he squares the ball up the same way. And if Nico hit more home runs, he'd even be more valuable. But you don't have to hit home runs to be valuable. When you play great Gold Glove defense and his like 2-strike approach, I think is fantastic. And when you get runners in scoring position, he actually doesn't strike out. He hits the ball. Like, okay, kind of reminds you of Rhino, so, and he's a second baseman with a Cubs uniform. It's hard to compare anybody to Rhino because we love him so much, but it just had that vibe to him. And he's turned out to be even better than I guess I thought.
He's been terrific. He's gotten better every year. You almost take him for granted because he does so many things so well. And I think, going back to his days at Stanford too, I remember where entering his senior year or junior year, there was talk about changing his swing to create more lift.
Yeah.
And he could have done that, but he decided not to because he didn't want to sacrifice, home runs for the sake of getting on base and helping his teammates. That's the kind of guy he is, team player to the max. And I think there's something to be said for that. Some guys at Stanford, they get labeled unfairly because they say, oh, he's got the Stanford swing, which is like for right-handers have that inside-out swing, line drives over
Sammy
second
Fold.
base. But yeah, or to John Gall, if you go way, way back. But this guy is special because I think he adjusts to the situation. If he needs to poke the ball the opposite way, he does it. Needs to yank it down the line, he does it. Special player.
Yeah, he is. Well, I hope he stays. Do you think the Cubs will extend him? You got him, Seiya Suzuki, and Ian Happ, notable Cubs that are in the last year of their contract. Not hearing any talk about extending Ian Happ or Seiya Suzuki. I'm sure Happ would like to stay. That's a pretty big price tag for a left fielder when, you could probably get close to the same production for a lot less money. But the guy's been he's been a great Cub. Like, I got to give Ian Happ that. Like, forget about the on-field stuff, just the entire person. He's done so many things. His podcast, he's involved in the community. He raises money, like he represents the organization well.
Yeah, and he's also been a union rep too. So, and he's embraced that very well. So, tip of the cap to him for that. And I think also, and you remember this, he wanted to play the infield. He wanted to be a second baseman. It didn't work out well, but I think he's found his niche in the outfield. So he's settled in pretty well there.
You think they'll sign? You think they'll extend any of these guys?
That is a great question because you also look at what's your option there. If they say, well, Nico's too expensive, you can slide Matt Shaw in there at second. If you decide to let Ian go, then you kind of juggle the outfield and give Kevin Alcantara his shot as well. Now, we know that Shaw has done very well in a small sample size. Alcantara, you've seen him play. I've seen him play. I like him a lot, and I think he kind of plateaued a little bit, and now is kind of making amends. He admitted to the media down in Mesa that he kind of slacked off a little bit. Now he's ramped it up a bit, which is good to hear. But I want to see it because this guy. Remember 2 years ago they were calling him another Eric Davis, and you kind of saw snippets of it. I saw him in the fall league a couple of years ago. Really liked what I saw, but didn't seem to ratchet up another level. Whether it was being blocked like Casey did with the outfield situation, might have been it. But you got to find out what you have at some point.
Yeah, he always reminded me a little bit of Dave Winfield with his swing, with those long arms. You really couldn't tie him up inside, even though he was long-armed. But I didn't like the makeup, and I'm glad he's saying that because you want somebody that's going to show up every single day and be focused on what you need to be focused on. And maybe it was a touch of immaturity, but that's the one thing I've never liked about him. That you compare him to Casey. who was like 21 years old, and he was like the mentality of a 40-year-old, just like focused and mature and all that stuff. But, Alcantara could be a guy that breaks in now, wins the job. It kind of leads me to the last thing we're going to talk about, and that's the outfield, right? You got Happ, and you got Seiya Suzuki, and you got Pete Crow Armstrong. And so you got another great defensive outfield, with Seiya being the guy that you're kind of up in the air on, but he played really good defense in Japan. And then, he was good at the end of last season. That fourth outfielder spot, do you think that it's Alcantara that can do that, or is it going to be one of these other guys like McCormick, or the insurance policies that the Cubs have had? And then throw Matt Shaw in there too, although I don't put him in the mix as much, because I think he's going to be an infield outfield Willie Castro type utility guy.
Yeah, that's a tricky situation with Shaw, because he's been an infielder all his life, and put him out there on a major league level. And I know if Joe Madden was the manager, he wouldn't think twice. He'd go ahead and do it. You have to maximize your lineup too. Do you have Happ get the majority of his at bats against one side or the other? So then you slip in Shaw when there's a certain situation for him. I think it's important to get Shaw enough at bats, but do you sacrifice some defense? Tough call there. Alcantara, I think he's also got like a fourth option. It's a goofy situation, but I don't think you can send him down at this point, because at that point you just might lose him entirely. And yeah, he had some issues. I remember last spring, one of his last games, his cuts were coming down. He struck out, and he got a called strike on a pitch he didn't like for second strike. Then he just mailed it in and struck out. And then in the top of the inning, he's out in the left field, and he loafed toward a ball that went from a single to a double, and they took him out afterwards, and then they optioned him the next day.
Yeah.
So that was a bad look, but I still think the kid's got a lot in the tank, and I'd like to see him be the fourth outfielder if he can get at least 200, 250 at bats. But yeah, McCormick's an interesting study, because he played solid in small snippets for the Astros, so he's a guy that gives you experience, which I think is important, because sometimes you really don't know how good your team is until somebody gets down and you find out who steps up.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the Alcantara stuff. Same thing I saw, strike out, then run the first, loafing, and then gets hot and you can't get him out, so
yeah,
we'll see. I think the Cubs would like to see him beat out Justin Dean and Dylan Carlson and Chas McCormick and anybody else they add to the table. Although I still feel like there's a Mike Tauchman type deal out here to be made. And then, and what does that tell you? But maybe they sit around and wait and just see what they, evaluate Alcantara before they decide to do something.
Yeah, it's interesting situation, because, let's face it, they're all in this year. They're going for it. And why shouldn't they? I mean, they got, they're well skilled in a lot of positions. And if they need a guy like Tauchman down the stretch, I think they would address it. But I think right now, the way the roster's constructed, I think they got enough to really feel good about what they have going into the season, even if somebody needs extra time, whether it be the rotation or for an outfielder has a nagging injury. I think they have a nice surplus right now.
I like Craig Counsell, really do think he's a good manager, but honestly, I don't see a whole lot different between him and David Ross, and that's not an insult. I mean, I think David Ross did about the same exact job, just my opinion. Your thoughts on Counsell? And how important is his third season now at the helm with that enormous contract going to be?
Well, I like the fact that it seems like Craig has really put it out there what the expectations are. 90 wins. I think that's a terrific benchmark to really to shoot for. And I think also the bullpen, the way he's handled the bullpen, he's done an admirable job. Although I think he's got more to work with in each year. He's been manager. He's gone from the lighter juniors to the Gonzales to now he's got guys. Phil Maton now. Last year he had Keller, who was special, and at the same time you have a guy like Daniel Palencia who's making stride. I think that's going to be a real interesting study as we go into the season. Palencia is a closer, but he's had some speed bumps last year.
Yeah,
don't have Keller there now, so. One guy to look after is Hunter Harvey, who's got a big-time deluxe arm. So he might be the setup guy or the fallback closer. So it's nice insurance to have. But I think Counsell has really done a good job mixing and matching. You know, he talks about getting outs. He's not the first guy to say it, but it really resonates here with the guys he's got to work with and the various roles that he can put them in.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, always great talking to you. We have Jody Davis's show called Beer Money coming up Sunday, tomorrow. And I want you to tell me about Jody Davis. Did you ever encounter him? Were you covering the team when he was there? I know
no.
you remember him as a player.
Yeah, he was a favorite of Harry Carey's. That's all I know is that. And if Harry Carey likes you, you got some credibility for sure. And Jody Davis is a solid player. I got to cover his nephew, Wade Davis.
Yeah.
Wasn't a man of many words, but he was a good guy. So good bloodlines there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Gonzo, come back and do this again, man. Great to talk to you. Enjoy the great weather as well in Arizona, because it does not get better than where you're at right now this time of year.
And I don't take it for granted. So thanks for having me on. Had a blast.
All those years in Chicago, you're out there. I don't want to call it retirement. I just want to call it intelligence, because you're sit back and relax and not freeze like everyone else. All right, that's Mark Gonzales. Hey, guys, like, subscribe, thumbs up. Get in the comments section. Tell me what you think. If you got any questions, we'll ask Gonzo next time around. And go